What's going on up in the north of Chile?
So you have Valle de la Luna, it's like the moon valley. You feel like you're walking like on the moon. You're in this huge boat, right?
Okay.
With 8 people approximately. You can go down the river, the instructors take the boat and you have to jump in this waterfall.
Oh, you have to jump down the waterfall. The relationship between Chile and Argentina specifically?
I feel like we have a grudge. They had to put some rules for Chileans to not buy like everything, you know?
So you get in a vehicle, like a big truck, and you drive over there, and then you would just load up your truck with food and you drive it back. Hey everyone, welcome to the Orbital Media Podcast, where we learn about the people of the world, what they do, and their cultures, one interview at a time. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so that we can make more content in the coming weeks. Today, we're going to be talking about the country of Chile. Culture, people, landscape, just a primer on the country, what it's like growing up there, what it's like living there, and what it means to be a Chilean. So today, we are joined by Bala. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Okay. We are also drinking a Chilean red wine. If you'd like to tell us a little bit about what this is.
All right, so this is a Carmenere, as we call it in Spanish. This is from the south of Santiago, the capital. So it's pretty close to the capital, actually. I've never tried this brand before, but it should be good.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. We can start things off. We've got our glasses poured. And cheers, or salud.
Salud.
Welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
I'm really interested to learn about Chile, where you come from. So first, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself? Kind of a little bit of your background and how you came to the United States.
Yeah, of course. So I'm from Chile, of course. I was born there, and like 3 years ago, I came to study actually in Florida, Orlando. I'm a filmmaker, so I'm trying to pursue my career here in LA, and that's how I get to the US.
So for people who maybe aren't familiar with the country of Chile, maybe they've heard of it, maybe they kind of know where it is on a map, but there might not be a lot of other things they know about the country. If you met someone and you said, I'm from Chile, and they said, oh, what? Or like, what does that mean? What would you follow that up with?
Yeah, I feel like the easiest way actually to understand Chile, it's the longest country in South America.
Yes.
Pretty fun. So we have like different weathers over there. We have the north where we have the desert, you know, the center, it's Santiago, the capital, and we have the south where we have like, as I call it, the end of the world, which is the most interesting thing to talk about actually.
Yeah.
And so it's a beautiful country. Pretty much.
Yeah, it is long. For anyone, we'll put it on the map, right? It's that really long, thin country on the Pacific coast of South America that goes all the way down and then it loops around at the end at the Tierra del Fuego, basically. Now, so this geography, I'd love to talk about it because I understand there's really diverse landscapes in Chile. Where do most people live?
Santiago, the capital.
And Santiago is located in kind of like the middle of the really long, thin country?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. And what's the climate like there? What's the weather like around Santiago?
You know, Santiago is like similar to LA actually. It's pretty similar to LA, living style. It's without the fancy stuff that you have here, but the weather, we don't have the beach that close, but yeah.
Okay, and then so that would be sort of we call it like a Mediterranean climate, right? It's like a wine growing kind of climate. It's pleasant, it's nice, it's hot in the summer, it's maybe still okay in the winter. Does it rain a little bit? Like in the
sometimes winter actually it could be like super cold. It gets like super cold.
Okay, it doesn't get super cold here.
Yeah, I know, but last winter for me was like super cold.
Okay, all right. So it's similar climate, yeah. So that's the center, that's where most people live. What about the north? What's going on up in the north of Chile?
Okay, the north is like super interesting because you have like the driest desert in the world.
Is this the Atacama Desert?
Exactly. Okay. So you have Valle de la Luna, it's like the moon valley.
Yeah.
And it's just beautiful. You feel like you're walking like on the moon, actually.
What is that? I've got to source some images for that. What does that look like? Is this desert sand or is it rock or what's?
Yes, it's desert. You have like salt caves and stuff like that. Okay. It's super weird but beautiful.
Okay, so the north is like driest desert in the world. Mm-hmm. It's basically like never rained there. In some places like ever.
Exactly.
Just ever.
Yes.
Yeah. And then what if you go? And I'm sure some people live there, but population's probably super low, right? Like,
yeah, no, you have people living all around the country, of course. In the north, you have Indian people as well. Okay. You know, I had the chance once actually to go there to Valle de la Luna, and I met these Indian people, and we had like a party, like a typical Indian party. Super interesting because they're different. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and then what about the south? Because it's the southern hemisphere, so obviously poles are flipped, so the further south you get, the colder it gets.
Yes.
What is that like if you started going down from Santiago?
Okay, so my favorite place in Chile, actually, it's called Villarrica.
Okay.
It's like rich village, if you translate it. You have different like weather there because it's Villarrica, it's like 800 kilometers far away from Santiago, kind of like 8-9 hours by driving. And there it rains a lot. Like you can have snow, for example, maybe at some points, but usually it rains a lot. And if you go like more to the south, it's gonna be the Patagonia.
Yeah.
So there's where you have like all these amazing views.
And Patagonia is that turning into almost like, we'd say like tundra in English, where it's these sort of windswept hills or plains where there's very little growing because it's just so cold? Or what is it like if you were in Patagonia, like what would that look like?
Okay, so last year, for example, I was watching a documentary actually about the Patagonia in Chile, and the climate actually changed. It like started to heal. You know, like the plants start growing. It changed a lot.
Okay. The part where you said it rains a lot, that sounds a lot like how on the Pacific in the northern hemisphere in California and then to Canada, you have the hot, dry Mediterranean wine growing country. You go further north and then it gets really rainy and it gets really sort of foresty and kind of cold. Is the same, or not cold like wintry, snowy, but cold just like you want a jacket and it's gray and like, is that kind of what's you think going on in Chile? The same thing, the further south you get that same climate. Yeah.
I feel like you can compare maybe like to Seattle.
It sounds like it, yeah. So I'd imagine then there'd be some, outside of Santiago, you might have some people who live around there too. Yeah,
you have a lot of people living there. So we have like regions, right? And usually the most populated, is Santiago, but the south as well.
So yeah, let's actually get into the history. So we talked about geography and kind of where it is in the world, what the climate's like, weather. What about the history of this part of the world? What can you tell us about that? Because again, I would imagine a lot of people listening probably don't know much about the history of Chile.
Yeah. So I feel like we are really known because of this dictatorship, because of Pinochet, right? We don't talk much about it, but I feel like, as I said, it put us like in a different wave rather than like other Latin countries, you know.
Yeah. Well, so if we back up, right? So Chile gets set up. You've got the Spanish show up. They kind of set up shop in the region, take over whatever narrative we'd like to go with these days. You know, pick your story. It becomes a Spanish colony. It's ruled directly by Spain. It then, along with pretty much all the other Latin countries, gets its independence in early 1800s, mid 1800s, kind of rebellion, war, they kick out the Spanish. Independent country. I don't know a whole lot about what then happens in sort of 1900s in much of Chile. People they're living there, you know, doing their thing, and then you get this military dictatorship. starting when? This guy Pinochet?
Like in the 70s.
Okay, and we're talking in a historical context too.
Yes.
So that's the narrative in Chile, is like this guy basically was like Hitler.
Yeah, he was like Hitler, the Latin.
The Latin version of
Yeah.
Hitler, okay. Americans who maybe are into this topic and they kind of study it, will often, they don't usually reference Hitler as much, but they'll reference guys like Franco in Spain or like Mussolini, where they're sort of more, you know, I don't want to say they're better, but they're just like standard bad guy dictators, where they're just kind of ruling the country with an iron fist, and if you mess with them, they're, you know, all of that kind of stuff. Perón too, if you want to get into that, in Argentina, right? But that's interesting that in Chile they say like Hitler specifically. That's very intense. So he's got this dictatorship, runs the country with an iron fist through 70s and 80s?
In 90s,
And
yes.
90s, okay. When does he die in office, or does he somehow get thrown out? What happens to him?
Yeah, no, I think he went off
The ran off the radar.
yes,
Yeah.
like after the 92,
Okay.
93.
Is this also one of these situations where almost like he steps down, where the sense is, okay, it's time for democracy now, so I'm just gonna leave? Or it's very rare that you hear about that,
Right.
that a dictator goes out somewhat, should we say, peacefully.
Exactly.
They're still alive and they leave the picture, but they're not running, you know.
Yeah, I feel like at the end it was more, I'm not completely sure, but
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, it's basically, yeah.
but I feel like, okay, so he wanted to change the country, whatever, and he did what he wanted to do, and that was it. You know, like, okay, you can rule it now.
That's really interesting. That's like, I think there were a couple Roman emperors like that, where they just sort of ruled and then they said, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna go farm now. And they just sort of left and they just like farmed lettuce or whatever. There is at least one or two Roman emperors who did that, but that's really interesting. But then should we say the happier part of the story is what happened to Chile after Pinochet.
Exactly. I feel like people were like, they keep this conservative behavior, you know, like as I said, we were like super under, like we felt Argentinians, for example, was better than us, like every other country was better than us because of what happened, whatever, and we were like that until the, I don't know, 2010 or, you know, not that long ago. Exactly. So, and that's when our minds start changing, and I feel like we realized that our country was one of the richest in Latin America, and we had great, I don't know, opportunities, you know, and so we were like a really pretty cool country.
Well, that's sort of my sense actually, and I said this, you know, before we shot, that I'm very fascinated by Chile as a country, and I'd love to visit one day. And a big reason why I'm so fascinated by Chile is because in many ways, I get that there's still very bad wealth inequality, just like there is in the United States, just like there is in a lot of countries, not just Chile. But compared to many other parts of Latin America, Chile's become this big success story economically in the last kind of 15 years or so. Where, as you said, it went from being poorer than an average Latin American country during the dictatorship to now Chile and Uruguay are the two richest countries in Latin America for per capita by a fairly significant margin, my understanding is, which is really interesting and excellent that a country can sort of do that. In your sense, though, did you notice that there were changes, because this happened over a very short time period? Did you notice there were major changes in your life or your environment from when you were maybe a little girl to when you were in your late 20s?
When you go out of your country, you know, to live somewhere else. I had the pleasure to live in Argentina actually for 1 year. So I feel compared to Argentina, we were really progressing in a sense, you know.
I'm curious. At some point, I'd love to talk to someone from Argentina as well, and those, because the two countries, they're right next to each other. They have certain things that are in common, where, you know, they both either have or had potential as these major growth countries. One, arguably, I'd say Chile probably done a better job than Argentina has, which always was this like what if question. I'm also fascinated by Argentina too, because of its history. But yeah, Chile. You said once you were in Argentina, you were in a way almost like more thankful for how far Chile has come as a country.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So is this even? Do you see this even in like the infrastructure of the city? So like the metro lines, the quality of the roads, the buildings. So I have a cousin. Him and his mate did a trip all around South America. They went to some places I personally would not have gone to. They may have even gone to Venezuela. Don't quote me on that. But one of the things that they said was when they were in Santiago, my cousin said it was the city where I felt I was absolutely in a developed country. I felt like I was absolutely in a developed country. Okay. I felt like I was living in a city with perfectly functioning things, everything ran fine. I didn't have any of the other sort of like, oh, like this thing doesn't work that I would have in a lot of these other countries. Not all the time, not all the places, yeah. But in large parts of Latin America, that was his sense, and he had none of that sense in Santiago. Mm-hmm. That it was much ahead, much further ahead than a lot of these other places.
I've heard a lot actually that we get to compare Santiago with Europe. You know, mm-hmm. I get to compare actually to LA because I feel like transportation it's kind of similar, and the amount of traffic it's similar to, you know, it's insane. We don't have the stars that we have here, you know, but
most places aren't LA. Most places don't, you know. That's why people move here.
But you have like the hills. You can see the Andes from Santiago.
Yeah.
So
mm-hmm. So the Andes, right? These mountains, giant mountains in South America along the Pacific side. I'd assume you can see those almost everywhere in Chile because they're right. That's like the border of the country, basically.
Yes. And Santiago is in a valley. So we have like two sides, like the Andes here, and we have like the Pacific side where you cross and you have the beach.
Okay, I see. So you've got the beach, there's a mountain, then there's Santiago in a valley, and then you've got the Andes. Exactly. Okay. Whereas LA, it's on flat land and it's right by the beach. Yeah. So Chile, much more of a developed country, a lot of stuff going on there. Wine, also huge industry there. Yeah. Chilean wines are now, quite well known, along with Argentina as well, sort of the big competitor country. Do you have a sense of other things that the country's known for with production and kind of, what it kind of sends out?
Like industrial things, like lithium, copper.
Aren't there it's copper or something, right? Where it's like Chile has like 1/3 or something of like all of some resource in the world. It might be copper, it's something like that.
Yeah, no, it's copper actually. Copper. Yeah, we send it to China and they mass produce it
and turn it into things.
Yes.
Okay. I'm also curious the relationship, and we're not, I wouldn't do like all of Latin America, but the relationship between Chile and Argentina specifically, because they're so close to each other, and as I said, they have a lot of, from the surface level, from an outsider who's never been there, they seem to have a lot of similarities between each other. But I've never been there. I
feel like we have a grudge.
I was going to ask that, which is like, what's the relationship? Is it friendly or is it like we don't like them?
No, I feel directly. It's not that I don't like them, of course.
We don't. Yeah.
I have family there and everything, but like. We have this grudge. We fight a lot. Recently, actually, we have news that, so if you cross to Argentina, for example, you can buy a lot of food for so little money, and there's a lot of Chilean going there by now. So Argentinians, they had to put some rules for Chileans to not buy everything,
Oh, interesting. And it's because, Argentina's economies, it's always just been this thing that it hasn't worked for 100 years. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people wonder, why does it not work? Yeah. But it doesn't. They can't, I don't know what it is, they can't do it. So I imagine things must be really cheap there compared to living in Chile.
Exactly, food mostly is super cheap right now.
Okay, so you get in a vehicle, like a big truck, and you drive over there, and then you would just load up your truck with food and you drive it back.
Yeah.
Is that a hard drive? Because you must be going through the Andes Mountains.
Exactly. Okay, from Santiago, I feel like it's a 4 hours drive.
Oh, that's not so bad. Actually.
No, it's not. Like the most difficult part is like you have to go to the Caracoles. It's like a snail's trail, you know,
Yes,
and
yes.
that's pretty.
I imagine some of those might be a little, if you don't like heights, not be great. I mean, there's occasionally I've driven on mountain passes in California. Speaking of food, I don't know really very much about Chilean food. Again, I know you've got wine.
Yes.
And that's about it. I mean, I'd imagine you have, what's the tea? They drink a ton of it in Argentina.
Mate.
Mate, that's it. What is mate?
Mate, so it's kind of like natural plants, you know, like a mix of different stuff. I'm not sure about what, but you usually take it in the south, actually. It's pretty common and in Chile as well, but in the south.
In the south. And that's in the south of Chile specifically?
Yeah.
Okay. But like in Santiago, people would still drink mate?
Some people, yes. My mom does it.
Have you had it? What is it?
Yeah,
What's it taste like?
it's really good. It's like chamomile tea, kind of. It's bad reference, but you know.
Do you drink it with a metal straw? Is there something I'd heard about that? Okay.
So you have a special cup, and you have this metal cup, and you have a way to actually pour the water, you know, everything. Yeah.
Okay. So, and do you take it straight, or do people mix it with things? You know, like I'm thinking tea, right? You might put honey or lemon or sugar or milk or
sugar. My aunt actually put some coffee, like coffee beans.
Like whole coffee beans.
Yes.
Okay. Does that add an extra kick?
It is pretty good. It is. I like it.
So you got mate, we've got wine. Anything else for beverages, drinks that are popular?
Not really. I feel like tea.
Tea, okay.
But you know.
Yeah, I mean that's popular.
Exactly.
Everyone loves tea. Who doesn't like tea? I certainly love tea. And what about food? Let's talk about food. I'm realizing I know almost nothing about Chilean food specifically. I could make some guesses about what I think might be part of the dish, or might be part of a dish, might be part of the diet, but I don't know any actual dishes from Chile.
Okay, yeah. I would love to hear where you're getting.
So here's my guess. There's one big component on seafood because you're so close to the water. So I'd imagine a lot of fish and a lot of like squid and octopus and like calamari. But I'm gonna guess it's not fried. I'm gonna guess it's like a ceviche type thing, where it's in like lemon juice and lime, and it's very like fresh. Verdict is out on steak. Argentinians, they love their steak. I do know that. I got to imagine there's some of that though in Chile.
Yes.
I'm thinking rice and potatoes as well for starch, not bread. But am I totally off about that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm totally off about that. And then something with corn.
Yes.
Like colorful corn. I'd imagine there's colorful corn. So that's what I got for what could be food in Chile.
Good. Yes, no, pretty good. Okay, so rice and potatoes. Okay, of course we have it, but it's not a big deal actually, I feel.
Interesting, okay.
But corn, yeah, of course. We have like a corn pie. It's called pastel de choclo.
Okay.
It's my favorite. You actually put like ground beef, you know, then it comes in layers. So you put like ground beef with onions, like black olives, chicken, and then you cover everything with the corn pie.
A corn paste, and you bake it.
You bake it, exactly.
That's pretty good, actually.
And yes, and I put some sugar on it, and with tomatoes. Jesus.
That sounds really good. I kind of reminds me of like a sandwich from Uruguay, the chivito that I had once in New York, and it was delicious. It was amazing. I'm like, I gotta try more of this food from southern South America. So you've got the corn pie. What else? What would be like if you were there and you had street food or something? You know, just like something basic, something easy that people might eat. I mean, obviously there are certain things in the world, right, like that are pretty common. Like here's a piece of bread, but you know, something particular.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we have, sandwiches as well, but we have a type of hot dogs, And
Interesting.
we put almost to everything, we put avocado, you know?
Okay,
So
yeah.
this hot dog, we have like a special bread, and we put the avocado on it with usually, or on some places, they have like a homemade mayonnaise, you know?
Yeah.
Jesus, it's something else. I've tried to done it here, but it's not that.
It's not. And is it, not to get all technical here, but certain American cities, as you know, they are very into their hot dogs. Beef, pork, mixes of stuff, or does it kind of vary?
Beef, totally.
Beef,
yes.
okay.
Pork, I don't think we eat that much.
There's not that much in the diet.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but beef for sure. Like we have this huge sandwich where you have these layers of beef, right? And you put again avocado and green beans and.
You put green beans.
Yes. Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked that really. So steak and avocado makes sense. Green beans. What else do we have on this thing?
So that's called chacarero.
Chacarero. Okay.
Chacarero, yes.
And how does that taste?
Okay.
Because
not my preference.
I was gonna say I like not to give my opinions here, but like I wouldn't think to mix green beans with steak and avocado. Tomato, onion, egg, cheese, like yes.
Okay, so usually you put the green beans, tomatoes, and the beef, and and bread, of course.
Bread, okay.
But I like it, you know. It's refreshing, I guess.
Okay. Anything else? I mean, other sort of, I guess I think of sort of classic, Hispanoparlante world dishes like paella and ceviche and al pastor, anything, right? In any form. Like, do you have stuff like that is popular in other countries, but also in Chile as well?
Let me think about it. Empanadas.
Empanadas, yes, okay.
Yeah, they're so common in Latin American.
Yeah.
We made it different though, but I feel it's pretty similar to Argentina's empanadas.
Right. And an empanada, for people who don't know, is right. It's like a pastry, basically a bread pastry with stuff inside, like meat usually and
onions, black olives. Yes. We don't put potatoes.
Oh, you don't put potatoes? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. So beef, black olives, and onions. Yeah. Nice. What other kind of stuff? I mean, obviously, I could talk about food for a very long time and just go through like this dish and this dish and this dish.
Yes. So what else? Like we have special soups where you put like a piece of beef. Of course, a potato, corn, sometimes green beans as well.
Yeah, I could see that work maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, so it's called cazuela.
Okay. Interesting. And do you have, like, if you had to pick your favorite food or one of your 2 or 3 favorite foods from Chile that like you miss the most? That you're just like, I can't get that here. I really miss it. Like, what would your go-to be?
The corn pie.
The corn pie. Sure. From how you're describing it, that sounds like what I would go with too. Yeah. I've never heard of that before, and that sounds absolutely fantastic.
Yes, it's okay. So the corn here is so different because it's sweet.
Yeah.
Back there, it's we have the sweet ones, but the other, it's like you can mix it with salt, and I don't know, it tastes different.
I mean, I don't know a lot about this, but I'm thinking about, again, those different colored corns, the ones that are purple and and like red and sort of these darker colors. And yeah, they're not. I've only had it a little bit, but occasionally if you go to like the right Mexican restaurant or something, Peruvian actually is a couple Peruvian places I've been to, you get a little bit more of that. I know what you mean, like the not sweet, bright yellow corn. Exactly. It's much more savory and a little.
Exactly. Like, yes, actually, Peruvian has this big corn, where they put in the ceviche, and it's different. Yeah.
It's a common. I mean, I don't know what they're doing with the corn over here, but it's a common statement people make, Europeans for sure, about a lot of American food in general, but they especially talk about the bread. Europeans talk about the bread and how sweet the mass-produced American bread tastes like. They say it tastes almost like cake, like low-quality cake. And I'm just saying, you're probably buying the wrong bread. That's what most people eat. Don't buy that bread. It does. Yeah, I agree with you. Buy stuff that's baked fresh.
Yes, no, for sure. Back in Chile, actually, the bakeries are full of bread, and we have two types: ayuyas and marraquetas.
What is ayuyas?
So ayuyas, this oval bread, and you cut it in half, and you usually have it for breakfast and tea time.
Okay.
And yes, you toast it. Have you seen the interview with Pedro Pascal where he says like avocado toasts are the best ones from Chile?
I haven't, but
Okay.
I do like that guy. He seems cool.
Yeah.
And he's from Chile, right?
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
Chilean. Yeah.
So yeah, we usually put avocado and it's just delicious.
Yeah.
It's another type of bread.
And what was the other type? You said ayuyas was the first one.
Yes, and marraquetas. So
Marraquetas.
Yes.
Okay.
So these ones they come like in a shape. It's kind of weird, the shape actually, but it's like a bread this size and has like four sides. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
So you can eat like half of it, and it's my favorite, I think.
Okay. Because I'm thinking, we're getting so into the weeds here with food, which I love it, because starch, I think of the Europeans are just, they love their bread. Like it's like national iconic stuff for them. Americans are just like, whatever, we'll just have whatever is available. I think of rice and corn, or really potatoes and corn, when I think of Latin American countries in general. But it sounds like with Chile, there's more of that European bread culture in Chile compared to a lot of other parts of Latin America.
Definitely. I feel we share that with France.
Okay.
Like, wine and bread are typical. Yeah.
Yeah, the way you're sort of talking about it, and you said like rice and potatoes, like we have it, but we don't, it's not a big, kind of a big deal. But yeah, I mean, obviously there are bakeries in other cities. I'm not saying like, Mexico has bread, obviously, but you don't think of it in the same way, that sort of European style of this is a very important national dish and we have stuff on it. In Chile, it sounds like that is the case.
No, totally. So bread for us is like you have to have bread for breakfast. And then, as I said, we have tea time, and it's important because we have this, we call it once, that it's 11.
Yeah,
exactly. So, and we have it from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. kind of before dinner, so you have bread with tea, coffee, whatever, but you have to have it.
Yeah. That sounds very British, actually, having tea time, which is, and also the fact that, right, we've got tea everywhere, but again, to generalize, I often associate coffee with not just Latin America, but America, like the United States as well. That the United States, Latin America, that whole sort of Western Hemisphere, coffee is the thing that people drink. You got tea, of course, but it's not the way it is in England, Ireland, China, India, Middle East, places like this. But you mentioned tea time. That's a thing that people do in Chile. And they're not drinking, I mean, I'm sure they can have coffee, right? But it's called tea time, and that's mostly what people are drinking?
Yes, mostly, maybe because you're so close to bedtime that if you take coffee, I don't know.
It's probably,
So, but yeah, usually it depends.
It sounds like there are a lot of unique food and drink aspects to Chile that don't apply to other parts of Latin America that I would think of it when I thought, like, what do you guys... Is there anything else like that? Little cultural differences with, the lunch, the dinner, the breakfast, the tea time, that kind of stuff that you, sounds like, do in a more almost European way. Because when I think breakfast in Latin America, either whether it's Colombia or Mexico or Brazil, I'm thinking like it's pretty heavy. You're gonna have like eggs and rice and toast and sausages and like all this stuff. But now for Chile, I'd almost imagine you can have like a tea and like a little like bread with some stuff on.
Exactly. No, yeah, we put avocado for sure and like jam, or cheese, but we never actually cook or bake. It's unusual for you to make some eggs, for example.
Yeah.
But I don't know, you don't have time maybe. But yeah, usually your bread with some jam, whatever.
That sounds a lot like France and Italy, honestly, and it doesn't sound like Mexico or the U.S. Though the U.S. obviously is changing, but we're talking in like the most typical. You went into a restaurant, you're like, give me the national breakfast. Like, what's that going to be? And yeah, I think for Mexico, U.S. I don't know about Brazil. Be curious to learn about that, but I'd imagine like. It's going to be hot. It's going to be heavy. It's going to be a lot of like meat and potato, and maybe not tomatoes, but that kind of corn and breakfast. I mean, breakfast tacos, right? Is like eggs you get all these eggs and stuff. Yeah. So light breakfast, lunch, dinners. Would it be people are meeting up late? Like, are they meeting at like 9 or 10, or are you sitting down to dinner at 7, 7:30, 8?
Yeah, okay, so for dinner in that case, it could be kind of like 8, 9, 9 p.m. Yes.
The later side, but it's not, because I think Spain's like one of the latest countries. I mean, they start going like, it's like 10 o'clock and they're just, I mean, this might be the weekends, but I'm generalizing here, any Spanish viewers, please let me know. I'm just remembering from who I've talked to, and one time I was there, that like, they're famous for how late they start things in terms of like sitting down to a meal and stuff. And I'm curious how much of that kind of goes through other stuff, yeah.
I think we go more for lunch time.
Okay.
Like, you usually, with family, you gather around lunchtime, say 2, 3 p.m., and then you go all the way like till 10 p.m.
Okay, yeah, that would be almost sort of here. You'd think of like a backyard cookout, or sort of that's the sort of event here in the U.S. that is like an all-day event.
Exactly.
People show up at lunchtime and they're leaving and the sun's gone, and it's 8 p.m. now. And
yes.
Okay, so that's more of the thing. And for sort of to go back to food, what kind of like people bring food? Is there that idea of we call that here the potluck, where you have a big gathering and people bring stuff to it, so you're like, here's a dish I made, I'm bringing it, and you lay it,
You can, but it's not common.
Okay.
Like, usually if I invite you to my place, I cook, I do everything, I bring everything. So you usually, for example, you can bring some wine, beer.
That's common here.
Yes, you bring the beverage maybe, but not the food, unless you want something specific. And I'm like, I'm having this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I should clarify. For almost every event that happens in, say, the U.S. or Canada, most people are just going to bring a beverage. These are the specific, usually big group events that happen, and usually it's not younger people, it's not college students, it's not people in their 20s. These are usually the families, middle-aged people, and they've got kids, and there's going to be a whole event. That's where often people will bring food to sort of a larger gathering. But yeah, if it's, hey, we're doing dinner, hey, come over and we'll, hang out, it's usually like bring a bottle of wine or I'm hosting a dinner party. Yeah, it depends. Speaking of family, I'm curious to talk about family, or just in general, let's say, the people and their way of life, or the sense of Chilean people, right? If someone said, again, you're from Chile, what does that mean? Chilean people, who are they? Right? What would your opening line be?
I feel we're family oriented.
Okay.
We care a lot about, for example, if I meet you today, right? And usually we talk about, yes, my mom this, my dad does this, my brother and sister, and you actually bring like your whole family to the table. And at some point I'm gonna start asking you about, how's your sister doing, how's your dad doing? So it's super common for us like to know about the whereabouts about your family.
Okay. And is that true even in, let's say, even in around Santiago, which is a big city, but your sense is there is still a lot of that even in a big city like that?
Totally, yes. Even with my friends, for example, when we hang out, we're this big group, you know, and each time we keep inviting, like, hey, my cousin is coming to the city, can I invite him? Of course, bring him over. So usually, yeah, my friends know my cousin side, you know, like they know much of my family as I know about their families.
Yeah, that's kind of cool because I feel sort of in a big city, and I get New York and LA, and you know you have a lot of people from all over the world. But even in big cities where you maybe don't, it is still like a generally similar population. I don't feel that big American cities have that. That they're very much people are just living their lives. They're very separated from other people, and like. Even if, and again, let's pick some city, Denver or Atlanta or something. And I don't know, I mean, if anyone's from there and let me know. But my sense is even if you were in a city like that or, you know, Austin, Texas, right? People aren't going to be as oriented around, their families if they're in a city. It's just, I've got me and I got my friends and maybe my parents, they live here, but I'll go occasionally see them. But I'm not like doing things that involve people from my family hanging out with me in the same way. It's probably less true, I think, for smaller towns. Obviously, smaller towns you'll have more of that in the U.S. I think, but big U.S. cities, I don't ever think of that as an idea. But even in Santiago, which is a big city, a lot of people live there. Yeah. There's still that like family connection to a lot of stuff.
Yeah, of course. Like, well, of course, I can talk in my particular case, you know, but. I feel like it's still happening, and that's what I miss the most, I guess, from Chile, because I don't know, sometimes I go to my friend's house and I know his mother, you know, and she's like, oh, you're like my daughter to me, and you know, you get to know all of them and you hang out for the weekend, whatever, you know. You can even go to vacations with them. I don't know.
I mean, I would agree with that. And I didn't grow up in a big city. I grew up in suburbs, in sort of a small town. And there are things I really didn't like about that. There are some things I liked. And I think, the idea of like knowing other families, knowing other friends' parents, like you can, right, as you got older, maybe you could even hang out with them, which I've kind of not really done because I just, like a lot of people, I just moved to a big city once I kind of came of age. And then you're just, the parents and the family thing, they live in other places. And you just, on one side of my family, I probably have a little bit more of that. I would like to say we do have a very good family structure with my mom and everyone that I'm related to, but I feel I'm even the exception to the rule compared to a lot of other Americans in that, and they live in a totally different country too. But it does seem in a smaller American town, I did see much more of that. And there's almost none of that in big cities in the US. And you said, that's what you miss the most.
Yes, I miss that because, so I moved here and I feel I have some friends, you know, but it's usually the talk about like job and goals and career and, you know, typical. And of course, LA, it's based on that,
You mentioned when you said people are talking about their jobs and their careers and like what they're trying to do and stuff. Is that like less something that people get into in Chile where there's less, I mean, again, in LA is sort of a little weird in this regard. People are saying like, I'm doing this job or I'm trying to go for this role or I'm trying to like get this promotion and I'm trying to, there's always a like, what's the next thing I'm trying to get done? Is that different in Chile?
Totally. Okay. I feel, so here you're more like career oriented. In Chile, well, of course we have it too, but it's a small talk, I feel, during the night, you know, like when you hang out, as I say, you talk about your family, how is everyone doing? And how are you doing, like in your career, whatever, I want to have this promotion or whatever, but mostly you're like, I want to travel here, I want to go there, whatever, have fun here, last night I did this. It's like more what's happening in your life.
Okay. Then less I'm trying to do these things and either let me tell you how cool I am or like, please help me.
Exactly.
Right? Or just I'm putting you on notice. Yeah. What about social life and friendship and what kind of people do for fun. Like, what are things people do for fun? You know, if you said we got a free weekend, and different ages, right? You could be maybe younger or older. Like, what are popular spots? Is it like we have more of a clubbing scene, beach scene, camping, you know, dinner parties at someone's houses, a lot of hosting stuff, or is it a lot of like restaurants, bar hopping, sort of? And obviously, people can do all of these things, right? But like some countries are going to be more into certain things than others.
Yes. Okay, so for example, in Santiago, you have a lot of hiking places. Okay. It's pretty similar to LA, but clubbing a lot. Like you can go a lot to clubs. I feel like the way of restaurants work, not that much. Okay. For dinner, for example, maybe you can have dinner and then go to a club, you know? But yeah, it's mostly go to parties. I used to do this a lot. And I know I'm crazy, but
I gotta hear this. What is this?
But for example, if I had Monday free, I used to go to Villarrica. That is, you know, 8-9 hours away from Santiago.
The rich village,
Yes, I drove all the way
it's
there.
South. Is that south?
Yes, south. Okay. So I drove all the way there, only to see my cousin, and we used to have parties there. Or do rafting, and that's insane. Yes. But then I come back, you know, like so I leave on Friday, and then I came back on Monday, you know. So you have like 2 days actually to enjoy, but it was worth the ride, I guess.
And rafting, are we talking whitewater rafting? Do we have helmets on? Are there rocks? Do we have the?
Yes. No, it was so you have in Villarrica, you have like two. You have the short one and the large one, I think it's called. So the short one is like the easy one you can do with your family. And the other one is the dangerous one because you have to actually jump out of the water, you know. Yes, and it's like, I don't know, 5 meters high. Like, I wanted to die when I did that.
Explain this to me. So we're in a river, whitewater rafting, we've got helmets on, there are big rocks, lots of white water, we're going fast. What is happening here? Take me through this mechanic. You play it out on the table if you want.
Yes, okay. So you're in this huge boat, right? With 8 people approximately. And at some point, you can't go down the river because there is no river. It's just like
like a waterfall.
A waterfall, exactly. So the instructors take the boat and you have to jump in this waterfall.
Oh, and you have to jump down the waterfall.
Exactly. And it's super high, you know. And
is it 5 meters? There's something about that.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
And I almost had a heart attack. I didn't want to jump, but I was like, okay, I have to do this. And then you get into the boat again. It's
so that's what it is. You have to jump off a waterfall to continue on with the ride.
Yes. Okay. So intense.
Okay.
Love it.
Yeah. No, I mean, it sounds, even with the climate and the landscape and stuff, it sounds like the kind of place where there'd be a lot of outdoor adventure stuff. Like that's like a go-to, we've got a free weekend, we're going to go do extreme sports or something outside and something in nature.
Yes. No, you have so many parks to visit, you know. In this, well, not in the city, but close to the city, you have this huge volcano, you know. So you have the lake. I don't know, it's just so pretty and you can do so much stuff. You can go to the volcano, actually. I used to go there just to see the landscape, you know.
So a lot of outdoor activity, a lot of adventure, and a lot of clubbing. Not so much a restaurant scene though. Like they exist, of course, but it's not, like I think, especially in a lot of the big US cities now, there's almost an obsession with like all the different restaurants, and we got to try this place, and we got to go to this place, and we got to try this place. It's a real cultural thing. And I don't even, it's funny you're mentioning this, I don't even think of that as being unique. I just think, oh, isn't that what people do? And it's not.
Yeah, apparently, yes. No, I feel like, okay, maybe in my situation, of course, but we usually do like takeout, you know, and you enjoy dinner, sushi, whatever you can have with your friends, but at home.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, you know, these are for developed cities. I get if we're in certain parts of the world, this is a non-issue. But you know, for living in a big city, there's money there, there's development. You know, it's a place. There's way less of a restaurant culture, but there's much more of a hanging out with your friends and eating food kind of at somebody's house almost. So you've got that. So climbing outdoors, eating food at a restaurant. Anything else though? Like, oh, and then I guess you said the dynamics with the friends is sort of, there's much more of a family focus. So for example, your friends might one of your friends be someone's cousin or someone's friend, like your friend's cousin who shows up to the thing and that's why you're friends with her.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's insane. With my friends actually, with my closest friends, you know. I know his whole family, and we are all friends. It's crazy, but it's a small world. I don't know.
Do you? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, do you know like how big is Santiago? Do you know ish? I mean, we can look it up. It's like how many people? Like, you know.
I think it's around like 8 million people living there.
Oh wow! It's that big.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like the size of New York City. So that's like a huge city.
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I figured there were a few million people but I suppose if you said, well, most people in the country live in that city, and Chile has more than a couple million people, you know, then it would be a big, then it would be a big city.
We are around 18 million, I think.
And the whole country?
The whole country, yes, but around
8 or 9. And throw in the suburbs. So including, let's say, suburbs and, you know, people, easily more than half the country lives in the greater Santiago region. Okay, but on the map, the country's so long and thin and it's so big, but everybody lives around this one city. Okay.
Mostly all the industry, like it is in there, you know. So, for example, you have big cities in the south and in the north as well, but universities are almost all in Santiago, you know. So everything is happening there, and that's why people say Santiago is not Chile. But
and when they say, what they mean is,
like, people move out of Santiago because seriously, yeah, we have so many people living there, and it's true, but at some point it's like, if you wanna scale in your career, you know, you have to do it in Santiago, and it's sadly, but
other cities I'm trying to think, there's what is it, Valparaiso is another city.
Yes.
That's about the only one that I can name. I'm trying to remember what I knew about Valparaiso. They referenced it in Master and Commander, but that's a separate thing. But it was involved like ships. There were ships there, and it was just,
the biggest port.
It's a port. That's what it was. Yeah. Any other places other than Santiago where there might be other stuff happening?
Concepcion. It is another big city in Chile, and La Serena. That's north.
And have you been to any of these other places or?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had the pleasure actually to travel a lot in Chile, and I've been in La Serena, and it's where you have this huge and amazing place where you can see the stars, like observatories, you know. We have the Flower Desert. Have you heard about it?
The Flower Desert, yeah. Maybe. Remind me.
So at some point, and it doesn't happen every year, I believe, but the desert gets like flowers growing, you know. So when you see at it, it can be like purple, yellow, you know, and it's something else. Like, it's pretty.
And there must be, when that happens, there must be a lot of people who drive out there.
Exactly.
To look at all of this. Yeah. It's like this was happening just a couple of months ago. The flowers around California.
Yes,
people were talking about it at work, and people were driving out for hours to look at the hills with all the flowers because we had so much rain finally, so that the city doesn't die of thirst. And the same sort of idea, like go out and look at the fields of flowers, Now, being in the US, I'm curious to talk about Chile and the US for a second, because I don't think of there being a particularly strong link, either good or bad, between the countries. It's just, I think if you asked a lot of people from here or other Americans, they would just sort of say, oh, Chile, like, oh, okay, like, that's interesting, I guess. They sort of almost wouldn't have an opinion on it. What has your experience been being in the US and telling people you're from Chile, or like, what is that like?
I've come to the surprise that actually people know Chile.
They do know Chile, okay.
Yes.
Well, maybe I wasn't giving Americans enough credit then.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, but that surprised me actually, because at some point at the beginning maybe it was like, okay, yeah, it's a South America country, yeah. But here, for example, in LA, people know about Chile and they're like, oh, Patagonia, yes, they know places. And I'm like, oh yeah, Chilean wine, yes. Oh, Alexis Sanchez, you know, popular people, whatever. But I feel that happened mostly in LA.
Okay. What about in Florida?
Not that much.
Not that much, okay.
Not that much, yeah.
Okay. So did you could then pitch them on my country and here's why it's great.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you were surprised that people did know about Chile, at least in LA, but yeah, again, it could depend on the thing. And generally sounded like pretty good things. You know, most of the things people knew were generally good. Like, you know, as I sort of said, you know, my sense of the country was there's this bad period and then it's a lot of good stuff after that into the present.
Yes.
That, you know, my general sense is positive things from the country.
Yes. Okay, so we have a lot of good things, for sure. But
Should we talk about the negatives? Are there negatives? Let's get into the negatives. I'm ready. I'm here.
Right now, the country actually is living a period of delinquency.
Let's talk about that. I was seeing a little bit in the news. There's been some political instability there recently, within the last year or so.
Yes.
What's going on?
A lot is going on. Like, okay, so the government, it's like, from my point of view, like, when you don't love your country, you will do whatever you have to do, you know, to earn money, whatever, you know. And I feel like that's happening in the country. Like, everyone is stealing, you know, while you're trying to, why this has to be this way if you are taking all the money, you know? So that's happening a lot. And I don't want to talk much about politics, but
sure, whatever you feel comfortable discussing.
But right now, I think the most demanding topic right now, it's delinquency. It's getting out of hands and it's terrific. Like, seriously, what you live there, it was so secure, the country. You can walk at night and it was pretty chill, pretty much like LA.
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously crime is anywhere in the world, you know, of course, be safe. But in the main, right, you can walk around, it's not a problem. You know?
Exactly. But right now, like...
So it's like, when you say, you mean delinquency in the sense of crime, basically. Yes. Crime is getting out of hand. Okay. And this is, I mean, and actually it's interesting, that's happening in a lot of US cities too, by the way, at the same time. It's becoming a major controversial topic, which we will also not get into in this episode. And this is, I'm assuming this is it a lot of sort of gang related, or is it more petty crime, just like people are just running wild in the streets? And here it's more of that, honestly. It's more just like, no, people are just being violent. They're just like, they're gonna rob something, they're gonna like whatever, attack someone. There is major gangs issues, but that's a slightly separate topic. In Chile, what is your sense? Is it?
Yeah, gangs. Like, So we were like a closed country, right? Nobody came into Chile until it started like getting super weird, and at some point they didn't register, I think, the immigrants. I'm not blaming them or whatever. It's just that some gangs came from other countries and populated in.
Yeah, that's a very tough subject to get into, and obviously US, this has become a huge issue in the last 20 years or so. This idea of making sure that good people come in, bad people don't.
Exactly.
there are some people who want nobody to come in, people who want everybody to come in, and it's like, where do you strike that balance on? And that's certainly, my personal view on this is, you should always have some amount of people coming in and out of a place, and you want good people to come into your place. You also don't want bad people into your place, and you need to deal with that. And unfortunately, I find I don't know as much about the politics of a lot of other countries, but certainly for the U.S. it seems people can get so stuck on their team for their side. They're like, well, our side believes X, and that's why that's right.
Yes.
That they sometimes, I think, lose the bigger picture, and that applies, I think, both to the left and the right here. Speaking of that, without getting into this, we won't delve into like our political views, but in terms of the type of government that Chile has had since Pinochet, whether it's sort of a left-wing, right-wing government, because again, outsider perspective here, but a common stereotype of Latin American countries is increasingly like the US actually. They look more like the US. You have these really extremist, either like they're left-wing and they're borderline communists, or they're right-wing and they're like, we think Mussolini was kind of a good guy and we'd like to bring some fascism to Argentina now. And it's like one of the two. There's nothing in the middle. Is that what's in the case with Chile? Like, how does that fit in with the?
It's super harsh. From one point, it got like left hand, then right side, left side, right side. Each government was like that. So we were from extreme to extreme, I guess. They all have their ideas of what is good. But right now we have a left side government and a lot of controversy.
Future episodes, I might delve into this when I feel brave enough as individuals. But I don't know. At the same time, I mean, this is partly, ultimately what I'm hoping to kind of do with this is, I feel that when you talk to people as individuals, a lot of the craziness does go away actually, and I'd like to hope that it would be somehow possible for more people over time to, not always just have to play for this team and be like, this is my team, and anybody who's not on my team is an evil person. And try to find some space in the middle and a little bit of compassion while not being stupid, still being smart. It's tough, but those are roughly kind of where my views are, I think, and I feel that when you go too far, frankly, in either direction, you go down really bad paths, I think, for most people. And most people, we want to live our lives, we want to have our friends, we want to have our family, we want to, have work that's could be meaningful, sometimes not. Some people don't care. They're just like, hey, I'm fine being an accountant, punch in and go home, Nothing on accountants, I know a couple. Sorry guys. But yeah, like we don't need the team political tribalism stuff all the time. And it's too bad that it sounds like that's the case there, and it is increasingly that is the case here too, which I think more people are starting to see. So we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, what are you, I guess, hopeful about or maybe fearful about for Chile and the country's future? Either one or both,
Okay, yes. I feel like I am fearful about, as I say, crime scene. Right now it's getting super bad, and I fear for my family actually, because they had suffered robberies and stuff like that, and it's getting like super scary, But besides that, I feel like everything else we can talk about it, But with this, when they just point a gun at you, it's something.
Is that, you said it's something we can talk about, is the sense that people don't want to talk about the crime, or some people want to pretend it doesn't exist, or is there another level here to why this is a complicated topic?
Yes. So it's complicated because every time that, for example, you commit a crime, right? You go to the police station and you are released. Because then you have to come back to this judge, whatever, and they're like, okay, you're guilty. We have enough proof, whatever. But once they go out of the police station,
who's gonna go back, right?
right?
Remember, we're gonna send you to jail. Please come here 2 weeks from now so you can go to jail.
Exactly. So.
Doesn't seem like a great strategy. Yeah.
No.
A great strategy. And that's been more recent, or has that been the case for a
forever?
It's been the case forever.
Yeah.
Wow, that's kind of that's the total opposite of a lot of other countries where it's just like they're just arresting other people. You hear about people being arrested on no charges in some. I mean, I'm not going to name certain names and certain other parts of the world outside of the Western Hemisphere where like that stuff happens. I mean, even certain communist countries, and I mean, I don't know that much about Venezuela or Cuba, but I could imagine like that kind of stuff might happen. But the idea of it's like, oh no, we actually just aren't arresting anyone. We're just sort of, That's another sort of really, the whole topic of being in prison and crime and arresting people and stuff. That's another huge issue. The prison population in the U.S. is probably too high. In other countries, maybe it's too low. Like, because that is often cited in the U.S. Like the prison population is way too high, and I would agree it probably is too high. And I'm sure there are a lot of people there who, in the scheme of things, probably you don't need them to be there. But the flip side is you don't put anyone in prison, or you put like very few people in prison, and now people who kind of maybe should be in prison are not, and it's a problem.
Of course it depends on the crime that you commit, right?
Yes, of course.
But either way, we are full of the prisons are full.
Really? Okay.
Yes,
Yeah, that's crime is a hard issue. I'd love to maybe talk to, I guess, people who study criminology, who are lawyers, prosecutors, right, who do this kind of stuff. Be curious to learn kind of more about that and see like how does that work? What are problems that people are facing? Because that's increasing a massive issue here now. And it goes, the funny thing is it seems to go in cycles. So in the U.S., the 70s and 80s were infamous for these really high crime rates. That's where the whole, I don't know if you even heard this growing up, right? The reputation of New York City being like super dangerous. They're like, oh, don't go to New York City. Like you're going to get, that came from the 70s and 80s where it was this really, it wasn't like certain country, it's not like Caracas or something where like my understanding is Caracas, sorry for people to know that. I know a couple people from Venezuela who live in the US now and they're like, it's a tragedy. Like that place is, I read accounts of people in Caracas and they're just like, I go out my front door and I'll just like get robbed like today, like next week. Like it's just like, it's a war zone. But New York had that stereotype kind of I think well worth it in the 70s and 80s. And I grew up in the suburbs and even when I came to other places and I told people like, oh, I'm from New York, they'd often say like, ooh, is it dangerous there? Like, is it like, how, like, are you gonna get mugged? And I had to explain like, no, it's fine now. They cleaned it up. And that was in the early 2000s and 2010s, it was very safe. Now there's a big crime spike there again. And I wonder, if this stuff is ever cyclical. Like
probably, yes.
Was there a period before this, right, where you said it was much safer and you didn't have this issue to the same?
Yes. I don't want to say that it's because of the dictatorship stuff, but I believe it's...
Yeah, that's another real thorny topic when you get into left and right wing and like what it's like. It's like, well, our government did terrible things, but, the left wing, it's like, our government did terrible things, but we did have, X. Like, other than like thorny, intense topics, which I do really like talking about. I think staying away from it and never, saying like really like mean-spirited things, but also being clear on like, why are things happening and what should we do about it is an important tone to take. I'm trying to think, to back up, if there are any more of the lighter topics, other aspects of Chile as a country that you would want to tell people that maybe don't know about the country. I was thinking like, I had written down like religion was one of them. Are people particularly Catholic or is it not so much? Like people don't really mind as much?
Yes, I was reading about it actually. My family is Catholic and I'm not, but usually, like, I feel that 80% of Chileans are Catholic, and the rest, yes, like atheism.
Yeah, don't care a little bit. Yeah, so that's sort of standard. Do you also find from again, this can be just your friends and people that you're kind of aware of, like younger people are a little bit less religious? Is there a sense of that?
Totally. I feel that's changing actually in Chile.
Okay.
I'm part of it. We are leaving behind all these grudges with
Oh, you said you're part. What was the word you just said?
like I'm being part of this.
Oh, you're part of this. Okay, yeah, part of yeah.
Like leaving behind all this, you know, like church related or relationship, because at some point we realized that they cross so many barriers. Like they say stuff that we don't agree with.
Yeah.
You know, so usually younger people, it's getting like, okay, you know, it's not like I don't believe in God or whatever. It just I don't trust church.
Yep. No, I think that's true in a lot of cases. And you know, with all the information that came out, it's another one. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he's very Catholic. He's originally from Brazil, but he's kind of gone to different places. And like, I'd love to have that discussion actually about sort of, because I'm personally also not religious. Like I'd say I see the value of Christianity in like the culture of Western countries, but I again, as you kind of put it, like I don't really trust the church. I really don't. But that's just me, and I'd be curious to talk to someone who said, oh well, here's why that's actually why I do trust it, you know, what or whatnot. But it does seem that that's happening all over different developed countries. Older people are more religious, younger people are getting less and less religious.
Yes. I feel like in my case, my family, and I'm talking about my mom, you know, and my grandmother, they were like, my perspective again, martyrs, you know.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
my grandmother, for example, had this huge room full of Jesus, like
Little Jesus statues.
And you entered there and it was so creepy, you know, all the candles all day. No, it was something else. So you were like, why are you praying to this? I mean, I understand that you believe in this, you know, but at some point they were like on their knees, you know, praying all day because you have to pray like 90 minutes. Why?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
And they sacrifice so much because of this. Like my mom actually used to say, no, it has to hurt your knees, you know. And I was like, because of praying?
Yeah.
Seriously? So for me, it stopped like making sense, all of this. And I was like, no, I mean, it doesn't matter if I believe in God or not. But whatever church says, I'm not following it.
Yeah. Some of those countries, I mean, you look at the map and it's like majority thing, it's like atheist. And that's, you know, some of the Baltic countries, I think France too, even, they're just like, we're done.
Yes. You can have another perspective, you know, like I feel Christianity or whatever it is, they lock you up in some sort of way, and you have to think like them, and you have to follow these rules. And when you are out of the box, you can see if you want to follow them or not, you know. So that's it.
True for a lot of things in life, that you sort of you should decide if you want to do that or not. You shouldn't have to be required to do it. I say, other than like, don't run around and like hurt people and just cause bad. Like, don't, obviously that stuff, like you should not be doing that. But in the scheme of like what job you should have, or like what should you believe, or what do you want to read, or what you want to study at school, like there should be an element of, you know, you should do what you want. Understand, obviously that might lead you down certain paths, but it's important, and it's why we want to live in societies that function that way.
Yes, that's what I appreciate about my parents. Actually, they gave me this pathway, like whatever you want to take, whatever you want to do, we support you. If you don't want to go to church, that's fine, you know. Still, you should believe in, you know. But you're like, but they're like super open-minded, and it doesn't happen that often, you know.
If you want to share, where can people find you on social media? If you have any, you know, YouTube account, Instagram, anything like that, you want to tell people about?
I have my Instagram account. I go by Bala, but in my Instagram I go by Balalets. So follow me and I follow you back, I guess.
All right, Bala Norambuena, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Chris.
And thank you so much for tuning in. If you've made it this far, please remember to like the video if you haven't already, subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you next time.